Roger Williams University is hosting a crisis management seminar on May 3rd at their Providence campus. Crises, whether a natural disaster, cyber attack, or financial instability, can have severe repercussions if not handled properly. This is where crisis management plays a pivotal role. Join Roger Williams MBA students and expert speakers to learn how to prepare for the unexpected. The program is totally free and open to the public. You can register online at rwu.edu/events/crisis-management-symposium.
This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast.
It was only a couple of weeks ago that Representative Cotter and I were on a tour of the area impacted by the forest fire in Exeter. And, what we saw was super significant. Obviously, we observed the specifics of the damage that took place, but there are a lot of big picture, we'll use the fancy terms here, the macro view of really our forest conditions and how in many, many ways this is an area that has been largely we're unprepared at a high level for many of the challenges that we face in terms of a climate change discussion and in terms of really in general, any situation that, that could create forest fires or other issues in our forest. So I got a text from the rep, and in that was a press release from the General Assembly that reads as follows. In the wake of the Exeter forest fire, Cotter introduces bill seeking study for safer forest management. Saving the 700-acre forest fire that raged in Exeter 2 weeks ago is evidence that Rhode Island needs to make forest stewardship a higher priority, Representative Megan Cotter said today after introducing legislation to create a commission that would help the state determine the best action for improving forest management. Rep. Cotter joins us this morning. Thanks for making the time.
Thanks for having me. Always nice to have a chat with you, Bill.
Always a pleasure. So, all right, so let's talk about the specifics here. What would this commission's charge be in examining the conditions of our forests?
So I think in Rhode Island, we have a lot of different groups that all do really wonderful things, but pushing in opposite directions. So first, this commission gets everybody to the table. We've got the firefighters, DEM, EMA, Land Trust, the Nature Conservancy, the Conservation Commission. Get everybody to the table and discuss what needs to happen to manage our forests better so that we are more prepared for the next forest fire. Because we got really lucky. I mean, let's be honest, 700 acres, but not a life lost and not a house burned down. And as you saw when we went through the I think like the hour tour with Chief Cattell, it was so close to houses. I mean, the wind blew a different way, a different direction that day, and things could have been very, very different.
Definitely. And we saw how the fire departments that had responded, the dozens of fire departments actually served as, well, we didn't see it. We were kind of given the recap of how fire departments set up essentially as the line of last defense defending property there. And look, like you said, the big takeaway from that event was that we were very lucky and we were very close to seeing this thing spill over. Had it gone just a little bit further to the east, it would have impacted a significant amount of homes. It would have also threatened significant farmland, including some well-known commercial farmland. And honestly, if you walk through and observe the terrain in that area, it could have even started to spill towards North Kingstown, Wickford. I think we could have had ourselves a truly transformational event. So you're trying to get ahead of a potential next event. And who knows when that's going to happen? Is it likely going to happen again that we're going to have a massive forest fire in Rhode Island in the next year or two? I mean, who knows? But it's pretty safe to say that with climate change and with many other factors, not the least of which includes people who are camping in the woods because they live there and they have to live there and they need to build a fire to stay warm or to cook, that's a factor as well. And all of these different sidebars and major issues create a very volatile, potential, I should say, volatile situation.
Right. I mean, I think we had 80 forest fires last year at small scales.
Sure.
So, I mean, the perfect storm could brew again. I mean, climate change is real. I mean, there's no denying that the climate is changing. Hot, dry days. It only takes a day. And I was very fortunate to be invited to the to like kind of the aftermath recap. That happened this last week. Unfortunately, it was on Tuesday, so I had to miss the first part of it. But some of the big takeaways were, DEM doesn't have enough forestry folks. And there's, in the state of Rhode Island, we have 75 miles of forest hose for firefighters throughout the state. And when they use those hose, they go to the forest fire management, DEM, they clean the hoses, they, rebag them and get them ready for the next fire. Well, when you have 150 acres burned down in West Greenwich, the day or 2 days before this fire in Exeter, the hoses weren't ready. They weren't ready because they only have 2 people doing that. And those 2 gentlemen are hard workers. They're smart. They know what they're doing. I mean, kudos to them for putting in all the hard work, but we need to be smarter, not work smarter, not harder, right? And at one point there were like 20 folks in that department. We're down to 2. And why would we wait? And I feel like this is part of the problem. Are we going to wait till there's a fire that we're like, oh geez, we should really put more people in that department because we're going to see potential larger fires? Why wait? We should be prepared now.
Right. So on this commission, would that include in your mind DEM and fire chiefs? I mean, who makes up the commission?
It's a 12-person commission. And my first phone call was to Rep Chippendale. He's been a leader in this fight for a long time. So I asked him if he would be on the commission and put his support behind it. And we had a great conversation. So a DEM, EMA, the Firefighters Association, the Chiefs, so 2 different firefighter associations, the Forest Conservation Commission, the Nature Conservancy Council. One person from all of the leading organizations. And I think that's the other piece too, that we have a lot of different organizations that are all kind of working in the same way. But I don't know how much that communication is, are they communicating with each other? I know Rep Chippendale released that, we should put $180,000 towards the Rhode Island Conservation Commission,
Yeah.
which I commend that. But I also think that until we get all of these folks to sit at the table, and then we can decide what the best course of action is. And hearing it from leaders of these organizations, I think it's the most important thing. I love this quote by FDR. He said, "I'm not the smartest fellow in the world, but I sure have smart friends." And I think it's really important. I'm not an expert in fire management, and I'm not an expert in the forest, right? I'm not. But all these folks are. So if we can get them all to the table and decide, what needs to happen, where the investments need to be made, where we need to spend money. We're leaving a lot of money on the table. We're not getting the federal match dollars because our state's not spending enough money on forest management. So, I mean, if we spend a couple more $1 million, we can double what we spend. I mean, why aren't we doing that? There's just simple things that need to be the questions need to be asked, and then go from there and find out, what does DEM think needs to happen? I mean, DEM needs to be at that table because, look, they're the guys that take the fall when all things go wrong, And obviously the firefighters, we need to know how to support them. And when we were on the ride, I asked Chief Cattell, are our forests managed properly? And you heard him. No, they're not. There's a lot that needs to be done. And then the other piece too, I got some calls after the fire, some from Richmond, some from Exeter. We had a lot of destruction in our forestry the last couple of years with invasive species killing off trees. If you have 10 plus acres, you have a management plan with DEM, but what happens if you have 4 acres? So maybe there needs to be more, more information out there for folks that have, more than half an acre that has, forestry. There are no resources for folks. And maybe we need to have resources. People want to be stewards of their land. They do not buy multiple acres of land because they, just for the fun of it. They enjoy the forest. They enjoy the hikes. They enjoy being out in the woods. And they want to take care of it. So let's teach them how to do that.
How much in your mind is this an issue for private property, and how much of this is for state management, and can the two coexist under this commission? In other words, can you go to a large farm and say, hey, here's what our commission has found. Your land is substantial, but it's privately held, so we're going to, quote unquote, mandate a certain amount of deforestation take place. Do you think that constituents of yours with large swaths of forested property would welcome something like that, or do you expect there could be some pushback?
I think, mandate's a tough word. I think that, and who's going to pay for it, right? Like, you may have 20 acres of land, but you're not a millionaire. I think there's a lot of folks in my district specifically that are land wealthy. You have a lot of land, but you're not, you're an average person making average salaries. So I think we need to figure out what kind of resources we can give to folks. And so here's some of the other things, when you start digging in, having conversations with DEM, there are resources, there are grants that can be given to private landowners to help be stewards of their land. How many folks know about this, right? I mean, I had never heard of it. I had no idea that there were this, like, almost like a scholarship that you can get for this. There are funds available, and you can apply for them. Do land owners with 10 plus acres know about that? I would guess probably not. And I think we have to look at it really from a higher level, maybe even like by neighborhoods even, because there's this fire in Exeter that had 700 acres. It was like 4 properties, I believe. So it wasn't just, if you're managing your property but your neighbor next door is not, how successful is it going to be? So right. I think, I don't want to say mandate, but highly suggest, I think, is the route we're going to have to go here. But also, how can we make sure that people have access to funds? How can we make sure that people, they really know what needs to happen? Because a lot of people don't. And it's great to bring in people like Bob Verrier, who, he's right on Route 3. He owns his own wood operations. So he's going into forests. He's basically an arborist. He goes into the forest and he decides which trees need to be cut. He helps with the process. And, he wants to come to the table. These are folks that do this day in, day out. I will never know as much as Bob Verrier knows. That's a fact, right? This is what he's done for the last, 30 plus years. But I certainly can talk to him and have conversations, and he can tell me, hey, listen, this is what I think needs to happen. And those are the kind of conversations that need to be happening at a top level. The governor's office should be involved in this, right? Because they're the ones essentially that are going to be able to pop it in the budget.
Well, that's the next question, I guess, is have you had any conversations with anyone from inside the executive branch?
I have. This commission is kind of the first steps to figure out where what needs to happen. Let's talk about that first and then go back and say, okay, I'm going to fight for it in the budget next year. There's no question. That is an absolute certainty. I am going to ask for money next year for this. I'm going to push for it. And I would suspect that, my Rep Chippendale, who's going to be on the commission, will hopefully also be pushing, and we'll be pushing in the same direction. There's a lot of, I think, being a new state rep. So, I don't know everything, but it seems like we need a little bit more oversight in a lot of different organizations in the state. And I'd love to see where we can cut some funds and put some more money towards things like this.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you went through with a fine-tooth comb the budget, you probably could find some areas where you could make an argument that, okay, if the budget is finite and it's set at a certain number, whatever that number may be, at each and every year, where are the priorities? Budgets are a reflection of priorities for any administration and any General Assembly, that's for sure. And this clearly needs to be prioritized. So if it's not an additional set of funds, and of course there are other ways to fund things like this. There's grants, there's federal grants, there's private sector grants, there's private donors, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, it's really a charge for state agencies. And like you said, the big takeaway for me was, like you had mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, the reduction of the people power inside DEM when it comes to forest management, and even a merger that took place between really the forestry wing and the agricultural wing. And you wonder, okay, yeah, consolidation in government is actually something that makes a lot of sense to me a lot of the times. I mean, there's so many departments or so many areas where you don't want to see someone lose their job, but you wonder, is there a more efficient way to do this, a more contemporary way to get things done? A lot of times we see certain things get pushed out to the private sector on a consultant basis or something like that, and I think a lot of that makes sense. One area where it probably doesn't make sense is something like this, where the reduction in staff and oversight and specificity of role might lead to disaster. And we came very close. So you wonder if, okay, this is a moment where we need to fund DEM more and give them the resources to do their job in a way that just simply reflects what they used to be able to do.
Right. And not having the hoses ready after a massive fire for the next massive fire, we need to anticipate that, and we need to know and think about the future. We shouldn't be waiting for another disaster and then with our hands up, oh, we should have known better. We should have done better. We can't wait for that to happen. We need to act now. And DEM knows what they need. They know they need more manpower. Having conversations with Ken Ayers, Arcadia is like 1,400 acres. They have 2 people working in Arcadia. I mean, it's not sustainable. And if we are really committed to, being stewards of the land, which we all should be, we need to act now. And having trees that have been decimated from invasive species still there, still up, we can't expect someone with 20 acres of land to be able to financially get rid of all of those dead trees and constantly, clear the forest floor. These are things that we really need to start thinking about how we can manage this better. And it's frustrating on some level because having certain talks with some people, they're like, well, what's Rhode Island? We really don't have a lot of forest fires. Right. We haven't had in the recent past forest fires, but we need to think of the future. And everybody wants to talk about climate change. We need action to prepare for climate change. It can't be hollow words. We need to really think about it and prepare for it. And that's the frustrating part, I think, because I think it's going to be hard to get folks, maybe even in the governor's office, to see that this should be a priority. I think the General Assembly will see it. I have faith that my colleagues will see that this is really important. Every district has forested land. Those hoses that DEM cleans, that's in every single fire district in the state. I mean, you go into Western Cranston or, even parts of Providence. I mean, there's forested area everywhere. This is not just a rural issue. This is an urban and rural issue.
Yeah, no question. And because of our small size, I mean, any rural issue can quickly become an urban issue, as I alluded to. Not that Wickford is urban, but and again, I don't know that the fire could have crossed Route 4 and made its way into Wickford, but it's not inconceivable either when you look at the trajectory of other forest fires on a global basis. I wonder, in the aftermath of the fire, not just specifically with your proposed formation of this commission, but constituent reaction. What have you heard from people on the ground who maybe were stunned by this event?
Well, I think there's a lot of folks, like I said, I got calls from Richmond. They're concerned. Like I had a guy who called me, has 3 acres of land, and he knows he's got a lot of dead trees on his property. He knows that there needs to be management. And he's worried because this could have easily happened in Richmond or any other place. And, when we had ridiculous amount of trees die. Richmond had to go out and cut certain trees that were that were near wires and potential damaging to, could fall into the road. And that cost the town money, and it was necessary. The town had to make that investment. There was no way that it could not make that investment for the next few years. So I think in the long run, people know that this has to happen, but private landowners, they want to do the right thing for their land, but they need help, they need direction, they need funds. These are all issues that we're going to have to find solutions to these problems. And, honestly, if we're spending more money on the forest, maybe some of the federal dollars that come back could be funds for folks to tap into to really be stewards of their land. It only takes one, I don't know how a cigarette flick out the window, right? I mean, on a dry day, really, we really, really need to start thinking about this, because I don't think this is going to be the end. And I also don't want to be on your podcast a year from now saying, well, if everybody had done what we should have done, this wouldn't have happened. We don't need people to be losing their homes. We don't need lives lost. And the firemen, look, those are the bravest men. When everyone's running away from it, they're running into it. And in towns like Exeter, Richmond, we have volunteers, and they are willing to put themselves in harm's way. We should be supporting them, and to support them, we need to do our part to make sure that we're not just willy-nilly putting them in harm's way. I mean, you saw too, the other piece to it too, that when we were in the driving and there was that big open field that was pretty green, had that been brown 2 weeks earlier, that fire could have easily gone across very easily. That field at that time was a blessing. And had it been brown, God only knows what would have happened. Yeah. The Chief Gavitt would have lost his house.
Totally. I mean, we saw it firsthand, and it's very real. And I think that the public at large should know just how fortunate we are that thing did not get more out of control, because if not for, a little bit of randomness, a little bit of preparation by a private landowner, and a little bit of luck, and obviously the tremendous efforts of the fire departments and the National Guard, we would have had a major. Not that it's not major. I mean, you go there, you view it, and okay, this land has changed for a decade likely, and it's significant. It's important to note that, but at the same time, like you said, property damage, obviously number one, lives lost, including we did lose lives, we lost plant lives, but in terms of human and livestock lives, we did not see that happen, and we're lucky. We're absolutely lucky that it didn't happen. So the commission that you propose, the resolution that you propose, I should say, directs that this commission would report its findings to the House by February 28th, 2024. So this is like quick action here.
Yeah, we don't want to wait. We got to be quick. You wait, and then a whole nother budget goes by, right?
Yeah.
So if we have some resolutions by February, that gives us time to really say, this is the money that needs to be spent. These are the actions that need to happen. We need to do this now. We cannot wait. And that's why we made the deadline February. I think that, having all of these, super knowledgeable people on 2 or 3 Zoom calls and pounding through, we'll be able to figure out what needs to happen pretty quickly. DEM already knows what they need. They know what they need. The firefighters know what they need. And this is just coming to the table so that, Rep Chippendale and I can get together and say, these are our priorities, and this is what we need to happen, and putting a dollar amount to that. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And if we wait past February, it's not going to get into the next year's budget, and we don't have time for that. I think that's the other piece that we really need to hit home, is that this is urgent. This needs to happen quickly. Because if we have another 3 large fires in a row, and we don't have hose, and DEM is trying their best to kind of climb out from underneath all of this, it's just not worth the risk.
Yeah, I think I know you're completely right on that one. Representative Megan Cotter, who was right there on the day of the forest fire in Exeter, right there in the aftermath, and now proposing the formation of a commission that would engage a variety of agencies, individuals, and organizations to take a look at forest management, something we have absolutely ignored here in this state. And you're right to shout out Representative Chippendale, I should say Leader Chippendale, who has been a very vocal advocate for this for years. And I even rode around his district with him. Gosh, it must have been 2019. It was definitely pre-pandemic. And he was pointing these things out to me, up in Foster and Coventry. And it was clear then. It's been elevated in its clarity in the wake of the Exeter forest fire. And let's hope that we are able to tackle this significant problem before it becomes something, completely disastrous.
That's the hope. I mean, we're just going to be going into more extreme weather, and we really have to identify that. And everybody talks about climate change. Every politician in the state of Rhode Island has climate change on their agenda or is talking about it on Twitter or Facebook. Like, it's time for action. So I think we're going to have to, demand some action. I think, hopefully the governor's office will be supportive. And that's what it's going to come down to is, are they willing to put this in the budget? Because they're going to have to be willing to put it in the budget.
Right. Oh, it's important stuff, and we'll certainly follow up on that with the governor's office, as I'm sure you will. Rep Cotter, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.